Hey guys, lovely to meet everyone. Um, can everyone hear me? Can you just like raise a hand, make sure my microphone's working or something like that? Excellent. Perfect. Thank you guys. So my name's Jay. I'm one of the solutions engineers here that's working with Shlomi, who I believe some of you met the other day. And today we're planning on going through a bit more of the platform, less about the architecture, how to set up the platform, and more or less just how to focus on a support today in terms of demonstrating. Shiv, did you have anything to add? Would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Yep. Hey, everyone. Good evening. I think we already had a roundup session about the architecture deep dive. Shlomi, the other day took the details of the architecture and the terminologies. Today, we're going to be covering one of the apps built on top of the Agent OS platform, which is Support and Plug. And we're going to be covering all the tech terminologies along with the implementation and along with the use cases as well, the basic use cases, right? Yep. The stage is yours, Jay. All the best.
Perfect. Thank you so much. By all means, guys, if at any time you have any questions, please add them to the Q&A. I'm sure we'll get back to them as we go. But yeah, let's get started. So first and foremost, before we get into the platform, I just want to quickly go over some terminologies because it is a little bit different to what you might be used to in the typical support realm. So when we talk about revs, we're talking about the end users. It's a proxy for revenue. When we're talking about devs, obviously developers. Whenever we're talking about agent OS, that's the system that are bringing the human agents and the AIs together using the knowledge graph. And if I ever say Turing, please just know that that is DevRev's Turing, DevRev's AI, and that was named after Alan Turing, obviously. Now, instead of talking about L1, L2, and L3, you might hear me refer to these as conversations, tickets, or issues. But just know a conversation is an L1 support, a ticket is an escalation, that is an L2 support, and an issue is an escalation again, which is an L3 or an L4, more aligned to a developer item of work. They are going to be the main things I talk about today. We'll also mention parts, and this is a component of a product. We're going to talk about Marketplace, Vistas, Plug being our chat agent, AirDrop, and MFZ, depending on where you're from. But these are the general terminologies and DevRev lingos that we'll be using over the next few sessions as well. All right. Now, as I mentioned, I want to get out of that. Here is, before I go on, here are some of our competition. We are a very vast platform and we can do a lot. If we're looking at purely support, we're going to be targeting your Zendesk, your Freshdesk, Salesforce, Intercom, JSM, Confluence for KBs. If we're looking at product, we're going to be going for Product Board, AHA, Monday.com, as you can see, Pendo for observability. And when we're looking at build, we're going to be targeting, your Jira, your Azure DevOps, your ClickUp, and your Asanas. Just to give you a bit more context of the platform and who we are competing against. Now, I'm going to start off with setting up a brand new org because it's going to be very important for you to, one, know how to create an org, but two, navigate the org, set up an org. So when a new org is created, we go through a little bit of a wizard. I will typically set up in light mode because I'm going to be demonstrating to customers. And I've found through experience and talking to prospects that light mode is easier for their viewing. We're going to set up a full name, a handle, select a role. At this point, it's not super critical. I'm going to call myself customer support today. If you need to invite other people to this environment, you can send your emails now. And then we get to this screen, and this is a bit of a tutorial. If you're into games, it's a bit of a product walkthrough area. It's where you can look at different things, how to set up AI-powered answers, how to create workflows, or if you're setting up for build, these sorts of different tasks. If you're used to the platform though, you're going to skip this and we can just click this back arrow and you are presented with the DevRev platform. So by default, because I selected myself as a customer support, this left navigation here is already set up. We can see under work, I can look at tickets, I can look at team tickets. Under product, I can start to look at engineering assist tracker. So what's the engineering working on? Product assist tracker, issues and trails, and all of these things we'll go through in more depth. For customers, we're probably going to be starting to look at dashboards related to our support, any accounts that might be in the organization, any contacts. And then finally, people is another way to, organize. It might be you organize your dashboards in there. How you see I've set up is not necessarily the only way to do it. And as we go through today's demonstration, you're going to see between different orgs I have set up, I do have different setups because I'm showing different things. The way this is set up now is more catered towards a support use case. But if I need to set up for a build use case, we can change the way these are. We can remove things from these sections. And if we want to add, we can explore. So looking at what are the stock views that we have and adding them to the different sections. I might want an active ticket tracker to be in work because this is a vista. It's a view of tickets that I want to be using to manage my own work. All right. If I open tickets, this is what we call a vista. And vistas are very manipulatable. They're very configurable. If you want to start to filter down any of the fields on your tickets, whether they're custom or stock, you can filter by them. So we can see all of these stock fields on the ticket object. And if I want to look at reported by, I can start to filter down. At this point, I'm the only person in this org, so I can only filter by myself. And in a similar way, we can start to sort by these different fields. We can group by them. And if you want to see more columns in your view, you can also customize. So I might want to be looking at the close date. I might want the created date. We can see that they've been added within the view itself. Now, if I do actually apply a grouping, maybe this is a grouping I want to be looking at in the future, I can go ahead and I can actually save this as a new view for myself, a new vista, and I might call it tickets by stage. I want it to pin it to my work in the left navigation. And I could say anyone in this org can actually view it. So I can set all that up and I can create it. If I want to share this with someone else, I can do that all from here. I can set up permissions. They are a viewer, they are an editor. So if, I want to share it with a team member, I can. Or if I'm a manager and I want to share a specific view for all my team members, I can do that. And they're only going to be able to have viewing privileges. What that means is, as I'm sure you're aware, I can now jump between tickets, team tickets, an active ticket tracker, and then jump into tickets by stage. And, we can set up these buckets. Cool. So that's a little bit about UI. We'll see a lot more of this as we start to do the demo workflow, but what's going to be more critical is how do we set up these orgs to demonstrate? And for that, we will be spending a lot of time within the settings page. And this is where all the configuration of what we want to do can be seen. The left navigation has a very similar aesthetic to what we just saw. And when we start on the general, this is where, we can start to look, well, edit details. Do I want to change the org name? I can do that. Do I want to mark it as external? Do I want to upload an image? Maybe your prospects or yourself, you'll have your own logo that you want to show here. For example, the DevRev logo, I could upload that. And instead of PT, it will show the org. At an account level, you can start to change things. I can edit my profile. I can choose a profile image. I can change my name and my display handle. Maybe I don't want it to be my full name. But I can also go ahead and start linking it to external identities such as Bitbucket or GitHub, so that if I'm a developer, I can start to track my work. Creating PAT tokens is also enabled within the account. Notifications, sometimes you love them, sometimes you hate them. Sometimes you just don't see them. And this is where you can go ahead and set up your notifications for both in-app and external. We can see that we have reminders. You can change priority from important to an others category to muted. And you can decide, do you want to get that by email? Do you also want to get that in the DevRev app? There might be some notifications such as attribute is updated. That doesn't need to be important. I don't need an email about it, and I don't need it to be getting pushed to my mobile as well. Whereas if I'm mentioned, especially if I'm a support agent, it's going to be a much more important notification for me to track. Cool. So part of the use cases that DevRev is used for is deflection. And for deflection to work, first of all, we need to be looking at, well, do we have KBs set up for it? All right. But also, like, how do we do that? And if I jump on the support icon, we can see here, plug. Now remember, plug is another name for our chat agent. I can see plug tokens, plug settings, plug nudges, portal settings, knowledge base, articles. DevRev is able to host articles in a knowledge base. And we can create them in many different ways. We can choose an article type, whether we're creating a new page. All right. And you have your rich text editing, heading 1. This is a demo. I might have heading 2, what is for lunch? And then I could say, you know, obviously a steak. Because honestly, that's what I feel like right now. We can create a title, demo title. Describe the article. And then we can categorize it. So categorization will come into what we talk to as our knowledge graph. Just for now, I want you to think of it as a mind map of things. In this org, I'm going to set it to default capability 1, but you'll get a much better understanding as we move forward as well. Collection is like a folder. So when you look at a support portal, you have folders of articles. You can choose your visibility. I want it accessed by customers. And I can say, all right, it is going to be in a draft state, but actually I want this to be published. And I can go ahead and I can create. And based on everything I've just put in, it's going to be either published, it's going to be in review, or it's going to be a draft. Greg, could you create a knowledge base on a subject and then put it in the marketplace for reuse? Knowledge base, marketplace, I want you to think of as snap-ins, and it's like the App Store on Apple. They're plugins, essentially, that improve your platform. But I think Shiv's also going to give you a slightly more detailed answer. Now, you can also see that when we're creating an article, I can use a link. So I can just go to a DevRev URL, obviously. I can add the link here. DevRev tickets. I'm going to assign it again. It's visible to customers. It's published. And now what happens is the system will go through, it's going to extract all of that important information from that URL, and it's going to be very much the same as creating it within the app itself. But either way, you're able to host your articles within DevRev itself and pulling information from a lot of different sources. When we're looking at collections, this is obviously what's going to be for the self-service on the support portal. You can go ahead, folder 1, for example, give it a description, say where it's going to be located on the home page. You might have a collection in a collection. Give an SVG icon, and I want to say this is will be published, where I can then add my articles, DevRev tickets, for example, and I move it. And now within that folder, you can see all those articles. Cool. So with the knowledge base set, that's what's going to be powering your AI. The first and foremost, before we get into the tickets that's in the system. But the AI is not just going to know how to use it. It's actually, we got to enable it first. And for that, we're going to go to Turing. Remember, Turing is the name of our AI. I'm going to click on agent, and we can see that it's already saying, look, do you want to activate Turing? I want to say, yes, I do want to activate Turing. And we have a couple of different options. Suggest, maybe end users, your prospects, our prospects, they're just not interested in a chat experience where it's getting pushed to, answers are getting pushed to their customers. In which case, we just want to suggest to the agents and let the agents have that AI as a bit of a co-pilot. However, in the other case, we can set it to a content powered. So let's use everything that's in the system to respond to the customers. And we can configure a bit more, an exit message when AI is not able to help. What should it do? Should it create a ticket? Should it notify a conversation owner? And who should it actually notify? So you can set these up by default so that no notifications are missed, none of those chats are missed. And within here, this is where you can actually start to look at your analytics as well. So queries over the last 7 days, you can add different filters. What is the surface, if it's coming from portal or not, as well as setting up your Q&As. You can create them manually, but you also might want to use AI to take what we're hearing from the customers. If AI is not able to respond, use the agent's response to create a Q&A pair, in which case in the future that would be deflected. Cool. Just catching up. Can you organize the KB in a way where selected personnel have a specific question answered, which is based on a specific restricted? Yes. So everything you saw when, if I go back to KBs and I open this up, this visible is customer permission. If you want to add more groups to user management, which you'll see in a minute, you can definitely set that up. And then different user groups are going to have different permissions. I hope that answers your question, Harshit. Excellent. Cool. Now, the next thing that typically prospects are going to be interested in when it comes to setting up an org is SLAs. And for that, you can go ahead and create multiple SLA policies. We can see assignment rules, publish, draft, archived, and it is as simple as pressing create. You can give it a name, premium, so it might be a premium customer, add a description. And from here, this is where we go through and we create the policies. I might want for a conversation with certain conditions. Maybe there's a tag. Maybe I want it only to come from the chat, which we call plug. I can set a first response time in calendar hours or org schedule if you've set up an org. I can say the breach is 10 minutes and I want a warning after 5 or 5 minutes before the breach even. I can set next response. I can set resolution. So realistically for a conversation, it should be resolved within an hour and I want a warning time of 10 minutes. So 10 minutes before the breach. Cool. I can go ahead, I can add another policy and ticket, and it's very much the same thing. You could add a severity, maybe for a blocker ticket. So a customer cannot work, then that's going to be much stricter. It might be 20 minutes. And a resolution time has to be within 2 hours. All right. So very quickly, you can go ahead and you can set up multiple different SLA policies to be handled by the system. setting your assignment rules, setting your exceptions based on account attributes and what you see or need. Org schedules, located above SLAs in the left navigation. Very similar approach. You set up a name. I'm actually based in Argentina. Don't let the accent trick you. Argentina biz hours. You can set the time zone. Uruguay is actually next to Argentina, so that's fine. Valid until, and you can set up business hours as well as holidays. So you can set all these up, and that's going to play into your SLAs. It's going to play into custom messages you can send out. Whether you're out of office, you can have automatic responses depending on how you want to configure the platform. Perfect. Cool. So that's a bit about setting up a lot. And now it's how do we actually set it up for the customer facing areas? Plug our chat by going to settings. This is where we can go and we can change. And there is a lot of customizability in this. You can choose visibility. Do you want it on certain pages? Do you want it on a URL that contains X in it? Or do you not? What do you want to start a new conversation? Do you want customers to start a new conversation, a new chat? Or do you just want them to use this as a mini support portal where they can view their recent requests and simply search? You can change the button text, and then you can go ahead and change styling. If you don't like this as a launcher logo, you want to change it to a logo of a prospect, that's fine, do that. If you want to change it to left or right alignment, that's all doable here. Spacing it from the bottom or the right. So I could go ahead and change that to 50. And then this, if I go into the playground and look at it, will be shifted across, okay? Brand logo. If you've changed the logo on the general, so the account logo, this will automatically be updated. But if you haven't, then you can change it here. Set light or dark, obviously that's going to be dependent on a prospect's use case, as well as accent colors, and that is using hex code. So if they're using a specific accent color on their website, you can pull that and you can use that there. Tabs, do you want them to see previous conversations? Yes or no? Do you want them to see any tickets they've raised? Would you like to expose the collections of articles, like your knowledge base? All of that is configurable here, as well as the layout. When I look at search, do I want to show that or not? And within search, do I want to enable AI on it? Probably. Let's help deflect as much as we can. And also, do you want to open articles within? So if I look at this, we can see that that article that I brought in is actually being iframed into this agent, this plug. All right. One thing to note for that is prospects, if you're using their website URLs, they need to enable they need to enable the iframing. Sometimes they don't, in which case you don't want to enable this. Showing recent conversations, showing recent tickets, so on the home page, as well as these little cards. Is there anything that you might want to put in here? Typically news articles, recent releases, all of that can be customized here. Adding in a banner image, adding in a link so that when a customer clicks on it, it directs them to that article. A really good use case is in the instance that a new feature has been released. You might want that top and front for customers to see. It might help deflect their questions and they can answer questions themselves. Another thing with Plug is, do you want to do banners? Do you want to do proactive support? Do you want to set up a little nudge? You can definitely set that up. Think of it again like proactive support. Hey, we're aware of this issue. We're working on it. Or here's a new feature release. Do you want to look at it? Setting up a title, setting up cover image, actions, rules. Where do you want this? What pages? How long should someone be on the page? So all of those proactive reach outs that you might be more familiar with in tools such as Intercom, you can be doing here as well. Excellent. Final thing that I'm going to talk about in terms of setting up on this is the portal, the customer portal. Do we want to add a customer name? Logo would again be updated if it was set in the general. Would you like users to have access to the help center for self-service? Would you like it to be public? Yes or no? Would you like to add little footers in? Would you like AI enabled on the search within the portal itself? So all of these things, again, you will see later in the demo when we look at the portal. But in terms of setting it up, this is where we're going to be going. Is there a banner that you'd like to have, or would you like it pretty plain? Would you like to customize the appearance? And also, would you like them to be able to create tickets? Yes, I do. Well, we want to say who's the default owner. It might be unassigned because that would then go into a ticket routing queue. And what area you might want to set it as a default product. Again, when we're talking about parts, we'll come back to that later and you'll get a lot more understanding. Is everyone doing okay so far? Not too fast? If we're all good, just a raise of hands. Perfect. I see Martijn doing it. Thank you, Martijn. Now, some of the next things that we're going to be looking at is one, user management. How do we manage users within the platform? And how do we start to incorporate extra workflows, extra things? By opening user management, I can go ahead and open. Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it. And we can open groups. So those customer groups we saw before, customers, customer admins, as you make more groups, you can then expose them as visibility into those privileges of the knowledge base. In terms of internal users though, these are the default groups: admins, platform users, support. Again, I'm the only one in here apart from some of the bots or the agents, DevRev agent, Turing. But we can also see platform users and support. And if I want to add another group, I can quickly create that. This might be developers. It's an internal group, but you could also set as external. I'm the owner and you can add users as well. So I'm going to add myself. And I can create that, in which case I can go in and now I can start to look at privileges. What should they have access to? Do I want to modify that? If yes, we can edit the group itself, change the name. If I want to look at privileges, we can see them here and I can add privileges. A developer probably doesn't need a lot of access to a ticket. They probably only need read access. So I can go ahead and I can set that. We can actually see some of the default ones. Do I want to turn it on or do I want to turn it off? If not, we can create the custom roles and then all of those privileges are there. I only want to be able to read unless maybe the user belongs to a different group as well. All right, maybe they're the owner of the ticket. So all of those privileges and those permissions can be set up. So you can choose who has access to what. And that is going down to a lot of different granular levels, different vistas, different dashboards, different macros or slash commands as we call them. Right? All of those permissions can be set up. If I want to invite a user, so another employee, we can send the invite. I can send it to a burner email of mine. I can choose the group. Who should they be going into? They need to be a platform user, but they're only a developer. They don't need admin permissions. I'm going to select the Support Pro license and I can send that. In which case, I can look at those invitations here. I can see what is the status. I can see what they're invited to. And if I actually change my mind, I'm just going to hit cancel invitation. And now that person will not have that invitation to join. All right. So that's a bit about user. But how do we start to now set up workflows? Now, workflows can mean a lot of different things, but automations within the system. I'm going to come to what is called a workflow builder. This is our no-code version. Our coded version of a workflow would be a snap-in, and that is obviously being code dependent. a lot more extensive. It's going to have a lot more access to external systems. It's going to have the ability to pull a lot more information. But we're still working up to that in UI, where we can go ahead. Creating a workflow, we're going to see, look, these are the default templates, which are coming. They're not here yet, sorry. But this is what is coming, and which will be able to set up a lot of what you're doing. Or from there, I'm going to hit new workflow, and we're given a bit of a, I'm going to say it's a bit of a Figma style board. And I'm going to say ticket, in which case I can go ahead and create a step. So I'm just going to need a trigger. That's the most important part. And I'm going to say when the ticket is updated, and I specifically want to look at updates to the stage. Cool. So whenever a ticket stage is updated, this workflow will now get triggered. I'm going to set an if-else conditional. Cool. Well, if the ticket stage name equals whatever you would like it to be, you can reference an attribute. So pull it from the ticket. I might say, no, not there. So you can set it to attributes, or you can even set it to words. Another one could be actually severity. Wherever my severity has gone. Okay. If the severity is equal to locker, okay, that's our condition. And if this is true, then I want to, update or notify a group. Send a notification to a group would it be even better, probably. Choosing the receivers, I want to send it to all admins. Maybe it's a support management group. I want to add a name, a body, a title to the notification. Help might be the body, a good one. And then escalation could be a title. And we can see that that is now ready to send a notification. I go ahead and deploy. And what's going to happen is a ticket is created, a ticket is updated to a blocker stage. I, being in the admin group, am going to get a notification. All right. But that then leads into, well, how do we have better integrations? How do we have more complex integrations? And that's where, obviously, we're going to click on integrations. We're going to look at snap-ins. And snap-ins, as I mentioned earlier, they're like bolt-ons. They're like the apps on the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. And this is where your more customizable workflows can be built. This is your coded version. And you can see, sorry, Greg, can triggers call triggers? Yes, you can definitely have a trigger call a trigger. Yeah. So snap-ins, being a coded version, they will have more extensibility. And by default, there's a few already in the system. Automatic customer reply. If I open that, we can see that this was developed by us. Okay, it was created then, it was last updated then, most likely we revamped it. I could go ahead, I can remove it, I can deactivate it, or I can configure it. And within the configuration, this is where you'll see, do you want an automated reply at all, yes or no? This would be the automated reply. Do you want to set business hours? And what is the response if someone messages outside the business hours? And those business hours are the org schedule. You can also set up business hours here. You can set your business days. All right, so you can enable a lot in this. And all of the snap-ins that if you develop or we develop, these configurations can be set up as needed. A typical snap-in that does get used is one to scrape a website, but we don't actually see this here. Instead, I can go and I can look at the marketplace. So this is where all the snap-ins will be. If you're using multiple orgs, then if you're setting up multiple orgs, they're all going to show here if you're in them. And as I scroll down, we can see the essentials: Jira, Zendesk, Salesforce, email, Slack. These three are what we call an airdrop. These are bidirectional syncs. I'll show you how to set up that connection in a minute for Jira. But if you need to install stuff, this is where you can pull it from. By clicking on each of these items, you can get a bit more understanding of how it works, what are the features. But also they're all going to come with some documentation. So by clicking on the Jira airdrop documentation, if I've forgotten how to set it up, that's fine. We can go, we can read. A lot of the snap-ins we develop have extensive documentation just to make it easier for setup in case things get forgotten. But if I go back to the marketplace and I'm going to start to search for KB, and these are everything that's going to respond to reply, surround a KB. Smart Import KB is the one I'm going to particularly look at today. I'm going to click on install, in which case it is going to open a new window. I can press install Snap-in. We have some instructions. If I actually look at this one, there are no configurations. And it is simple as in this discussion panel, I go ahead and I write sync and then the URL, devrev.ai, all right. And by running that, it's going to start to pull and scrape a website. This is one way to do it. We are always looking to improve, and we actually have an API that's in beta, which we can share with you. It's going to be a much more extensive scrape, which will help you set up orgs for your demonstrations and for when you go out. So that's a bit about the coded versions of workflows. And one of the things I did touch on is airdrop. I'm going to preface it. Don't ask me how we haven't had a talk from Apple. Not sure, but that's the name we've chosen for it. And it is unique to us. First things first, though, you need to go ahead and you need to create a connection. And you can see all the different tools that we can connect with. To set it up, you will obviously need someone that has permissions. All right, so admin permissions. You can choose to make it public or not. Simply this means is if it's not public, only I can see the connection. If it is public, other people can see the connection. But that does not mean they can edit it. I set it up, so only I can edit it. Jira demo, sign in with Jira if you have SSO configured. I don't know if you can see my box that's just popped up, but you just go through in a normal SSO configuration and you press accept. And we can see that now we're connecting and I can choose, cool, I want to install it. There, we have our connection. If at any time I need to reauthorize, I can rename, I can remove, and by doing a remove, it's going to remove all the content from the workspace itself. With the connection set, that means we can go ahead and start an import. These are the ones we by default have as either single, one directional, bidirectional. Jira is a bidirectional native import. I'm going to choose the connection I want because you could set up multiple connections across multiple or different Jira orgs. And you can also connect to multiple different projects. So different imports for different projects. Here I'm going to click project 1. I'm going to choose a default part, which will get mapped later. And then the system understands the mapping, but there will be some manual work to begin. And we can see it's going ahead and doing an extraction. So what it's doing is going through, it's understanding what is in the system. What do we need? Okay. What do we need to map? And we can see here, status sync, mapping required. And we prompted with this button, map fields. Here we can choose what do we want to pull in. Do we want to pull in comments? Do we want to pull in issues? And do we want to pull in these types? We can see in that particular project I've just connected to, We have 6 bugs, 4 tasks, 3 subtasks, and 2 stories, 7 comments. I click next, I can filter. Maybe I only want to pull in where an issue is a certain subtype, and it has a field of X. But you can go ahead and set those filters so you're keeping DevRev clean. Maybe the prospects don't need everything to come across, and that's fine. You can set that up. A comment is a comment. An issue is an issue. If you are connecting to JSM, Jira Service Management, then you might want to say it's actually a ticket in DevRev. But since we're looking at Jira for an engineering perspective, an issue is an issue. I can set my mapping of priorities, high and highest to P0. If you want, maybe I disagree. I might actually say that a medium is a P1, lowest is P3, and low is a P2. I can go ahead and set that up. Maybe it's different on each of the different subtasks. Click create next. And then the final step is, what are the fields do you want to pull in? Okay, so these fields are coming from Jira. And actually, we've gone ahead and done a calculation. What is the occupancy level? And this is a really important thing. Maybe a company created a field in their Jira 2 years ago, and they only used it for 4 tickets. The occupancy level isn't very big. Do they really need that in DevRev? And this is where you can have that conversation. Okay, cool. We might not need some of these fields. Do we want it to be filterable? Yes or no? You can set that up. And you know what? I don't want this label on that one. So you go ahead and you can set and choose what is coming across, what is getting mapped, going from Jira to DevRev, and then DevRev back to Jira. By clicking save, it's now going to go and transform all that information. It's going to pull all that information in. Now, everything you see that I just did for Jira, it's more or less the same across the different systems. Salesforce, obviously, we're going to now be looking at opportunities, accounts, and contacts as well. For all of these imports, I can go ahead, I can click, I can look, and I can see, all right, well, this was the import I just did. We had 23 users that got mapped to these, 15 issues that got mapped. And you can see all of that, and you can click on it, and you can go and have a look at it within the system itself. And here's everything that I just pulled in. You'll notice that it's keeping that child-parent relation that I can view as well. So that bidirectional sync, it is very robust, and it is one of, as I said, our differentiators. As we work down the list, and what we might want to set up is a typical use case, especially from companies coming from a Zendesk, is macros. And we have macros. We don't call them macros. We actually call them commands. So I can come here and we can see there's actually a few default commands in the system. We can see, like, what is it? Okay. Talking about permissions. Who is it available to? What is the description? What is the message? So you can access the fields that are on the ticket. You can access the customer. You can access different things, and you can perform actions. Well, when I run this, I actually want to update the stage as well. So stage, I want to set it to one of these stages. These are the default stages, but you can also customize them, as you'll see in a minute. Okay, when I send this, actually I want to be cool. I want this to be a work in progress. And I only want support agents to have access to it. So now only support agents will be able to see that. Obviously, the more groups you have, the more you can set that permission. If you have a legal team and you have legal macros, then only people in the legal team need access to it. And that's the way you can go ahead. If you want to create a new one, demo, you can choose the surface. Do you want it to be available on a ticket on that L2 support? Do you want it available on a conversation being that L1 support? Or do you want it on the issue, which is that L3 support? And that is for, if your developers are working in DevRev, they might use those / commands. Or if your support agents are working in DevRev, but your developers are working in Jira, let's help your support agents just send those stock standard messages to the developers. Hey, this has just been raised. This is the issue. Please go to this website to see the session recording, for example. The status, pretty self-explanatory, availability. And in the example, maybe it is on an issue. I'm going to say, hey, please look into this. For customer. And if I want access, double curly braces, and we can start to look. All right, you can link to anything on there. If I want to then say thanks, and I want to send my own name, current user, current username, current user email, however you want to sign off on it, and click save. Actions, as we said before. Now, one thing I touched on as we talked through that was stages. And as I mentioned, customization. And I've also mentioned that fields on objects can be customized. We can see that from here. So you can see from that Jira import we've actually created a few issue subtypes, and that's how we start to track. And you can see what's coming from Jira and what's living in DevRev only. But maybe on a support ticket, just the base is not enough. And I actually want to go ahead and I want to create a new subtype. I'm going to say it belongs to a ticket, and I'm going to call it a feature request. Cool. So now when we look at the ticket, we have the base ticket, we have the feature request ticket, and these can be customized independently of each other. By default, fields from the ticket, the base ticket, will also be accessible on the feature request subtype, so it inherits from its parent object. And I might want to go ahead and edit. I want to create a new field, a custom field on the ticket itself, and I might want to call this customer start date. That might be an important metric. I'm going to say it is a timestamp, or a date would be more appropriate, but you can see all the different fields that you can set up here. Do I want multiple values, or is it required? Yes, this might be a required field. Is there a default value? And what's the placeholder? So just like an input. And from here, I might say customer start date, or maybe it's user start date. So it's even more specific to the user whose the ticket is about, the reported by user. And I might want to put this into account details group. So you can start to group these different custom fields together. Visibility, should you see it in the summary? Do you want it in the detail view? Do you want it to be there during creation? Do you need it to be hidden? Now, the hidden field, it might be something that's auto-populated by one of those workflows, whether it's UI or by the snap-in, and in which case you don't necessarily need it to be seen. What actionables do you want it to be filtered? In that Vista I showed you, do you want to filter by it? Would you like to group it by it? Do you want to be able to sort by it? Tooltips, those little hover overs. I don't think I've seen any today, but a little icon that, in case someone's not sure, what is this for? They can hover over and it says, this is for this. And then finally, the description. You can add that in. I press save. We can see it's newly added, but it's not currently available. It's only a proposed edit. And you don't want to be me, who's created fields and just forgotten to publish it, and then you spend 20 minutes trying to debug just simply because you forgot to publish. So you just go up here and you press publish and click next. It's just going to ask to confirm this is the new field that's being added, and we can publish those changes. And now that is there ready to be used. All right. Now, as I was doing that, you might have noticed there are a lot more objects here. So opportunities is another one we can create a subtype for. You might want to have a renewal, a partner opportunity. You might want an upsell subtype of opportunity. And each of these different things you can set up to show different things. You can customize them as you need. Maybe a dev user, you want a specific custom field that is related to them. These are the default ones, but I don't see at the moment the GitHub. Maybe you want a GitHub username that is just there. So you could create a custom field for the GitHub handle. And the final thing when we're looking at customization is new object. So your custom objects. And what might this be called? Maybe, I don't know, inventory. Just to give it a different use case. What is the prefix? cinv might be good. What is the description? Custom object to track inventory. We can create it. And this is everything you can do. So add fields to it so it's targeted to what you want. And you can start to use these to start to connect different things with links and custom links. All right. But typically, like, this is a way for you to really create objects for end users that are specific to their use case. As we move further down the list in terms of customization, we see stage customization. I am going to say that at the moment, this is a bit of a tease. It is here. We're not able to actually move things around. There's no edit, at least, but that is coming. So at the moment, if you do need to start modifying these stages and the stage transitions, that is through an API, which we can provide information with you outside of this asynchronously. But we can see here, if I'm going to look at ticket transitions, we have open state, in progress state, and all the way down here, closed state. For each of these different states, we have different stages. Open is only queued, and it's allowed to go to each of these different stages. So I can go from work in progress. But if I go to work in progress, you'll notice I cannot go back to queued. I can only move forward into these stages. I might be able to go to awaiting product assist here. And from awaiting product assist, I might be able to go back to work in progress. Okay, but this is how you'll be able to set up those specific stage transitions, and how you can set it up to customer needs. It might be that they don't like this terminology. They're so used to the terminology from their current tool stack, they want to replicate that. That's fine, that can be set up. Last two options in the settings. And then I'll stop having a monologue and open it up for some questions on settings and setup. Experiments and control panel. This is if you want to, be able to personalize things, set custom navigation. By default, this is actually enabled because we saw that explore panel before. And control panel, this is where you can start to toggle things on, toggle things off. Okay, this isn't enabled by default in all orgs. But this is, a little bit more on customization. So I'm going to pause there. I'm going to stop my share so I can actually read questions. How is everyone traveling? What questions do you have when it comes to the settings, the setup, the configuration? No questions?
No questions, I believe.
Perfect, perfect. So I will ask the group, before we go into actually a typical use case of a demo, Would you like to take a 5-minute break now and reconvene in 5 minutes? I did see a question come in. What's the difference between external groups and internal groups? External groups are your customer base. Internal groups are your employees. And Greg, I see you're excited for a 5-minute break, maybe even 10 minutes. Excellent. If there's no further questions, let's pause for a 10-minute break. When we come back, we'll look at doing a typical use case of a demo typical support use case demo, and see how this all feeds in between everything, okay? Excellent. See you guys in 10 minutes.
You're speaking on mute.
Thank you. Sorry, guys. I hope we're all rested and not overloaded with information. Spend the next hour or so sort of covering a typical use case of a support demo and highlighting, you know, sort of why things are important, where our differentiators are, why they might be important differentiators. By no means will this cover every single use case you will encounter, but from this you can build upon it and go from there. All right, so what we're looking at here is a fictitious company called Maple Software. It's one of the websites we use for demos. And this is where you're going to start to see some of those customizations that I was mentioning. And hopefully start to really connect those dots. We can see that it is like a normal app. It does work. And at the top, we can see our banner that was set up in the plug nudges. We can see our nudge itself. And these are really great tools for setting up proactive support. Maybe there's a new release. You want to, as I said, push it to customers so they know. And that will ideally deflect questions being even asked. Perfect example is plug user observability is live. I can click on this, I can go to that link and I can read and understand all about it. And that will possibly answer the questions I have. Now, opening the chat agent, and just to give some understanding as to why we call it plug, is it can be plugged into any surface. It can go in your web apps, it can go in mobile apps. So that's Android and iOS. It can be going into React, React Native, and I think we're also working on Flutter. But it is just a plug. It's installed with 7 lines of code, super simple to install. Looking within the plug itself, and I actually like to call it a chat agent, so I don't confuse people with the word plug. But we can see recent conversations. So as a user, I can look at the conversations I've had recently. I can also look at recent tickets and I can start to look at any statuses that they might have. Okay, so here, this one is completed, this one is in progress, and this one is open. But we can also start to look at, you know, custom cards. Do you want to go to the support portal? Do you want to just read this news article, this recent blog? But ideally, this landing page within the chat agent is a space where end users can get answers themselves, use it as a mini support portal so they don't have to have another tab open, and realistically just help self-serve. If they do need to look for an answer, everyone's gotten so used to going through articles and then having to read. Because this is a payment software, I'm going to ask, what is a 1099? Let's be real. It doesn't matter how great KVs can be if end users don't read them. So let's make it easier for them to help themselves, and let's use AI to first retrieve information from those KVs, providing privileges are set correct, and to formulate a natural language response. while also saying, well, here's some relevant articles based on what you searched. In which case I can open it and I can read it and I can say, yes, this was helpful. No, this was not. In which case it can go in to feed the AI and it will either keep recommending this or it will start to modify. You'll notice I can also look at just articles and I can even look at tickets. So here as a user, I've already created, or I had 2 tickets logged for me about a 1099 resulting in HTTP 500. Okay, so as I mentioned, it's a mini support portal of sorts. At the end, we see a tab for help. So when we think about those collections, as I mentioned earlier, we can see, cool, this is everything in this collection, and then there's everything in the troubleshooting collection. So a collection within a collection. You can open them again in app, so customers can get to the answer immediately. And finally, what most customers will go to a chat agent for is to start a conversation, to chat. They want to talk to an agent. But sometimes they're just reaching out without even reading. And so we want to help agents there to deflect those L1 support requests so they can spend their time on the more important stuff, the L2 requests, the requests that take a little bit more information and a bit more work. So typical question for a payment might be, I need to dispute a payment. Now, this is a reasonable question or reasonable thing for a customer to reach out about, but it doesn't necessarily need to be asked. We can see here that the AI has actually gone through and said, cool, well, here are some of your recent transactions. A monthly subscription of this, a one-time purchase, an annual membership, an e-commerce purchase, a luxury purchase, and please let me know which transaction you would like to dispute. And because I'm a very frugal person, I'm going to say the luxury purchase. And the AI is smart enough to understand, okay, cool. It failed due to insufficient funds. And since this did not succeed, there is no need to dispute it as no funds were deducted. Okay, that makes sense. If you have any further concerns, please reach out, let us know. Excellent. I've just had my support request deflected. I don't need to be on that conversation with an agent. The system's smart enough just to understand. Now, I might actually say, you know what, I don't agree. I had the funds. They weren't insufficient. In which case I can say, you know, I don't agree. I want to speak to an agent, and we can go ahead and we can have that conversation and can be connected with an agent. Now, the alternative is I do reach out and I'm actually asking about something that's not in the system. I might be saying, I am experiencing API error 500 with payments. Okay. Now, this in itself, at least last I checked in this demo org, is not a KB. Someone might be trying to bamboozle me and they might have added it, in which case this will be a much different demonstration. But if it's not there, okay, someone has changed some settings. But if you're going to ask about a question and it's not actually in the KBs, the AI won't actually respond. It's going to be like, I'm sorry, I don't have an answer to that. Let me try something very basic. What is 10 times 10? Actually, that is a question I've asked before. What is 7 times 7? Well, apparently someone's changed these demo org settings on me. Apologies. But what's going to happen is we're not actually just passing these questions through to an OpenAI. All right. We are using first and foremost our own LLM to retrieve the knowledge base articles and to formulate a response. With that response that's formulated, we're then going to use an enterprise version of an OpenAI to then 1, rephrase, and 2, just determine a confidence level. Does this response answer this question? If yes, perfect, send it through to the end user. If no, just say, simply put, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. Now, this is just one way for customers to reach out. Another way is a support portal. And this is what our support portal looks like. This is the banner, this green image in the back. We can see those collections, which I can go in and I can look at. All right. And I can actually ask AI, help me with the payment gateway. And we can see here, we've got that AI response. You can make payments using our DevRev payment gateway. Here's the article if you want to look into it. That might help me, it might not. If it doesn't, and I actually do want to go ahead and create a ticket, I want to do some self-serve, I can come here, I can create a ticket, I can type in payments not working, add a description, and I can submit it. And from here, I can see everything that's happening. I can see the source, who was reported by, which was me, obviously. I can see the title, and I can say, this is urgent. And this will get sent through to a support agent to take up. If I go back to the portal, I can now review it. If I have multiple tickets open, I can see them all here in an all list, an open list, an in progress list, and a closed list. So I can understand how my tickets are progressing throughout the life cycle. But what does this look like from an agent's point of view? Back in DevRev, and you'll notice this left navigation, as I've forewarned you, is a lot different. I've set it up much differently. As a support agent, I'm actually going to be working out of updates. And this is where updates on all of these things, talking about those notifications earlier. And I can filter by them. And I can filter by object as well. Am I only looking for a notification on a ticket or a conversation? If you have other custom fields, you can start to be getting notified. Maybe I only want to be searching if I've been notified by Arturo. I see the import in the other and unread versus all. If I click on all, you're going to see more. So conversations were here, announcements. But this is a way for me to keep on top of my notifications. As a support agent, I'm probably going to work in inbox, and inbox is an omni-channel inbox. We can see all the different sources: email, Slack, plug, WhatsApp, unknown sources, maybe such as Discord. Okay. And we can actually see someone's just sent through, and it's actually Janice. So this demo org, a lot of people use it for us. But someone's just come through and said, hey, is the euro accepted? Yes, it is. This is going to get deflected. We don't need a customer to take over, a support agent to take over. I can see this example on the luxury purchase. And as an agent, maybe I do want to pick it up because the customer has said they disagree. I'm going to quickly summarize because I want to understand what is happening without reading. I can see Janice wants to dispute the payment, and the payment was for the luxury purchase. So now I don't have to read all of this. I simply have to go and read, okay, well, this is the amount, insufficient funds. And I can do a macro or that command, hello. So give me a minute. I want to have a look at it. And then I could say what seems to be the problem. Okay, so taking over. And if I look at the customer view here, we can see from a customer experience point of view that they now know they're talking to me. If I'd set up a profile picture, they'd be able to see my profile picture as well. Now, by just simply sending that message, two things have happened actually. We can see our SLA has been met. The first response was met in 7 minutes. Resolution time is paused because we're actually waiting on the customer. We're waiting on the end user. So it's in a stage waiting on user. It's assigned this to me. So now if I need to look at conversations assigned to me, I can. From here, I can look at events. So what updates have there been on a conversation level, and even internal discussions. Maybe I need to reach out to someone. I could say at, let me think, Martin, what do you think? And Martin, being another support agent on the team, he can come through and say, yeah, hey, like, this is legit. It looks like there is an issue because there were funds in their account. But either way, we can have that internal collaboration and understand what's happening. If by chance it was in a different language, you obviously have your translate feature up the top. And as a good support agent, if I'm going to go to an API 500 error, I could even start to look at session recordings. Okay, so what were they doing when they reached out? As a good agent, this is going to help me help them. And ultimately, it's going to reduce that mean time to resolution. I can press play. This can all be masked if they would prefer. Now, what we're doing is we're actually recording the click stream. So the elements that are being clicked or tapped on with the phone. We are then, you can see the masking here of confidential information. But once we have that click stream, we will recreate in the back end so you can view that session recording. In terms of privacy, when we're looking at masking, this is actually masked on the local device. So never is this information ever hitting a DevRev server. All we see is asterisks. We're seeing only the masked information. But as we're playing, we can see, you know, summary, how many dead clicks, how many rage clicks, how many network API errors were there. We can look at details. What is the browser? What is the version? Maybe they're using an outdated version of the browser. There was just an update on the app. It's now not supported by this browser version. We can see who the contact is, the creation date. You can even see, you know, what was the page load time? What region are they in? As I said, I'm in Olivos, Buenos Aires. You can even get down to the suburb I'm in. So this might help me as a support agent just understand. And if maybe I'm a more of a support engineer, I've got a little bit more technical background, I might start to look at the developer tools. What was happening? What APIs were called? What were the responses that we got? What was the duration? All right, we can start to filter on, you know, your JavaScript, your images, your different HTML elements. What about the console log? What errors were there, if any? So very quickly, we can get a really good understanding. And this eliminates the need to message the customer and say, hey, look, what were you doing? Can you send me a screen recording? Can we jump on a video call? Can you open your developer tools and take a screenshot of this? We need to remember that not always end users are the most technical, and they're already a bit frustrated if they're creating a support ticket. So let's not make it worse for them. Yeah. Last thing that I want to be doing in support if I've reached out is have someone say, oh, do you want to jump on a call? No, I don't want to jump on a call. I want I want a solution. Now, let me go back to the previous screen. Now, just for a great demo, you can see that we have great security and I've been logged out. But jumping back in. Cool. Now, we can see here there's a lot of conversations going on. I'm actually not sure which one's mine anymore. I can just filter by mine. Okay, and now that's made it a lot easier for me. Here I can take over. And I've looked at that session recording. It did not help. I'm going to create a ticket. And by default, the AI is going to say, hey, look, for this customer account, which is Janice from Umbrella Corp, somebody actually in Umbrella Corp has already created these tickets. Do you really want to create a new ticket? And the idea is that if someone's already in the account has created that ticket, we don't need to duplicate. Okay, we can just have something. And I can link it to that. But I might actually say, you know what, no. I'm hovering over, I can see all about it. This is actually a new ticket. This doesn't help. So I'm going to create a new ticket, and let's make the lives of the support agent easy. Let's use AI to pull information across. And it's also going to start to suggest, hey, look, some of the other stuff in the system, in the whole system across all customers, this might help. We can see some engineering items denoted by ISS for issue. Do you want to look at them? In which case I don't at the moment. I can see the title is there. I can see the summary. If I want to change the subtype, I can. It might be a bug. It might be a support. I'm going to assign it to a part. And remember, as I said, part is a way to categorize. We'll talk about that more when we look at the product app. But I'm going to say it is a payment dispute. It should go in the payments area, the category. We've already pulled the owner across. The severity is a medium. I might actually change that to a high. And I'm going to press create. In which case we've now escalated that L1 to that L2. And we can see at the customer level, they've already been notified of the ticket. If I go to that chat, as a customer, I know this ticket has been created. I can track it here. I can see it's open, and I can open that and see the details. And I can say, I had money. Okay, I'm obviously an irate customer at this stage. Now this is the L2. This is the escalation. And not everyone will keep a conversation open and then escalate to the L2. In fact, you could have a workflow where the conversation gets closed. Yeah, we agree that this is more than just a simple support case. We are escalating this to a ticket. I'm going to close this conversation for now. Let's talk more on the ticket level so we have the collaboration all there. And we are moving towards a system where we'll actually just be able to convert a conversation into a ticket while keeping all of these customer messages here. But we can see that Janice has said I had the money, in which case I can respond and say, system says you didn't. Okay, we can have that conversation with the customer there. This will also be by default now going to their email. So they can track it in the portal, they can track it in the plug, or they can track it on their email, and we can have that conversation a lot easier. You'll notice events. It's important to track events. So we can see ticket was created, the reported by was updated, emails. Now this will be great if, maybe there's a change of ownership. Maybe someone updated a field and it's incorrect. One thing you'll notice is the subtype has been updated to bug ticket, but I didn't set it as a bug. What has actually happened is if I hover over a ticket classifier workflow, so in that UI that we went through earlier, that UI builder, someone built a ticket classifier. And based on this ticket being created, it has gone through and it said it's actually a bug. We can have internal discussions and we can see another workflow, that ticket classifier has been there. And it's given me reason. Why is it this way? And this is because someone's gone in and they've actually prompted the workflow, which I'll show you in a second. They've given an AI node instructions. What do you want to do? From here, I can also have that internal collaboration. I might say at Sunil, what do you think? And similar to the conversation on the internal discussions, that user, that employee will get the notification. They can come in, they can respond very much like Slack. They can have a rich text editor experience. They can reply with inline code and code blocks, quotes. And both of these conversations, tickets, and issues, they can be used to alert people in Slack if companies are very heavy users of Slack. This ticket's been created. This ticket's been created. If a ticket is created from an external Connect channel on Slack, that can create within DevRev. And then you can have those customer messages, those conversations there. You can also have internal discussions from Slack and Dev and keep all that context together. Now you can imagine though that like a ticket like this that Sunil picks up, especially if there's more interactions, it's a lot to see. He doesn't want to read it, so let's just make it simple for Sunil. Let's click a button and get a summary. Okay, here's the problem. Here is the major developments. This is currently what's happening, and here's the unresolved queries. Here's the linked objects. Here's the stage, and what are the next steps? So let's start to make the life easy for Sunil. Again, with AI, it's always important. You'll see it in ChatGPT, upvote, downvote, did this help, did this not? Because it all goes back into feeding the algorithm to improve. Moving to details, we can see all those fields. Okay, I can change, I can modify. You'll notice I did not update any customer information. I didn't set the Umbrella Corp. I did not set Janus. But because this system understands the linkage between the L1 and the L2, that conversation and that ticket, it's able to infer, it's able to pull that information in. And this is in a customer information group. You could also open the email integration group and see who the email members are. But I might say, well, what else is there? Needs response. I might want to view that. So I can start to really understand what's happening. Needs response. Maybe I change that to yes, so it can be tracked. You'll notice there's now a blue dot here, and I know that I need to track this. Now, from that internal discussion, Sunil might come in and say, hey, Jay, yep, definitely, for sure, this is a bug. There was definitely money in there, the account of Janus. We need to investigate this further. Well, let's go ahead and link this. And before I link it to a developer item, you'll see we can link it to an opportunity. So starting to talk about that CRM. Opportunities that are living in Salesforce can be pulled in. We can see the conversation that this is linked to. We can see any incidents that it might be linked to. And again, we have access to those sessions. But I'm more interested right now in let's link it to a developer. Similar to creating a ticket, the system's going to say, hey, look, these developer items of work are already in the system. That they are completed or they might be done. Do you really need to make this? And yeah, I could link it to this issue. That works fine. It's going to reopen it for the developer. It's saying, hey, look, you thought you were done, but actually you weren't. Or I might want to link it to something that's already in the works. Okay. And the reason for this is we don't want to be making out the lives hard for our developers. We don't want to be duplicating their work. We simply just want to be making it easy. Now, I actually haven't gone through and read, or I did read, and it is a new issue. AI is already pulling that context across, and there's one last ditch effort. Are you sure none of this is actually related? And I can create. Now, creating, if developers are to work in DevRev, that's easy. We just press create. If developers to be working in Jira or Linear even, then we're going to change the subtype. Because there might be multiple connections, Jira connections, there might be multiple projects. There's multiple subtypes. We want to be making sure we're connecting to the right developer team. And so from here, I can say, well, I want it to be in the Maple connection or the Maple project. And I'm going to say this is a bug that maps. We've pulled across Janus, who this was reported by. I might want to link docs. I might want to add an extra field to this. But I can go ahead and I can click create, in which case you'll notice it's linked here. And if I scroll to the top, this queued, the stage of the ticket, is about to change. So let's automate the lives of everyone working. We don't need a system of record where everyone needs to be doing those Slack messages, those emails, those phone calls, those swivel chair conversations to see, has this been updated? Okay. And down to the customer level, that will get fed through. So closing that feedback loop without needing to actually do the extra work. When we're looking at a Jira ticket, because we have different stages in Jira, and this particular org only has to do and done. That is all mapped out. And as the developers do their work from Jira, that will update in DevRev. But if the developers are working from, say, GitHub or a code repository, we can track those events if wanted. Okay, cool. This engineering item of work, someone's just created a new branch for it. That probably means it's starting to be worked on. So instead of being to do, it's now in development. Let's automate that stage change in DevRev. Push that to Jira. Okay. There's now been a comment. There's a PR. It's now in review. Let's automate these changes so it's easier for the developer, for one. Like, they're great at coding, not always the best at keeping sources of record up to truth, let's be honest. But for a support agent, it's very easy for me to now understand what is happening. I can simply open any tickets that I am working on that have a developer item, an issue connected. I can go to the events tab and understand what is happening. Are the developers working on it? If I need to send a message to the developer, I can from the discussions. What is the status of the GA, of the QA, sorry. I send that through, that goes to Jira as a comment on the Jira ticket. And we also have an app on the Jira App Store in which your developers can actually view information into the support tickets itself. You can set up those permissions. Maybe that you only want to give permissions to view the internal discussions, but maybe you want to give them access to view the customer messages as well. And in both cases, you can set read or write access for that. So, Arpit, in terms of creating a bug ticket from a conversation via email, we haven't gone through that today. We're doing everything from the plug widget. However, in terms of doing that, I will show you the setup for an email. That is something that you can choose. An email might come in and create a conversation because it might not need to be a ticket. And a phrase I'll use that I heard is not everyone wants a ticket. The only ticket people want is a ticket to a game or a concert, for example, yeah? But you can set up an email comes in, automatically create a conversation, or automatically create a ticket. It says via email. So this one here, if we look at the source channel, we've got app, but we also have channels being email because we can also communicate by email. The source channel is app. We can respond in the app, or we can respond by email. Great question though, and great observation. In terms of creating the ticket and that bug ticket, I'm going to create another ticket just to demonstrate. I can just choose a subtype and select bug ticket and press create. I hope that answers your question. Sorry, I saw a hand raise. Let me see. Cool. Perfect. All right. Now, final thing is, it was a bit delayed, but we can see that stage was updated to awaiting development. And I'm going to go from the conversation, open everything back up so we can see everything. Was this one? Was not that one. It was this one. Cool. So remember, blue issue, Jira, yellow ticket, L2, and orange conversation is L1. If I look at the customer messages, we can see that this ticket is now awaiting development. So close that feedback loop. As this moves through, again, stages update. Okay, so that will update this stage as well to a point that that whole feedback loop is closed. Me as a support agent, I'm kept up to date, and the end user is also kept up to date while making it a lot easier for us. So two things. I'm going to have a quick deviation before we move on. Since we did briefly touch on email integration, I'll show you it is a snap-in. I'm going to search for email, open, and configure. So this is where you can choose, does an email come in as a ticket or a conversation? You can set up additional emails, right? But yes, when doing emails, you can do that. But what I really wanted to focus on briefly are the workflows. So we noticed that that ticket I created, I never set it as a bug, but it got updated as a bug. And I know it's the ticket classifier workflow. So I'm looking through, and I'm going to find that ticket classification. Here, ticket classifier. I can open that, and we can see this is a bit more extensive to what I showed you. And I can look at the Ask AI. So Ask AI is a node, it's a prompt. And we can see ticket was created. Well, here's the prompt. Let's take the title and description from the ticket. Let's use some definitions. Let's set some instructions. Okay. And you can really be granular into how big you want this prompt. It's similar to using ChatGPT or a standard AI. You'll get out what you put in. The more information you put in the prompt, the more information you can get out and the more granular you can be. So this is the workflow that actually went through before, which auto updated. And we can see in this exact example, first of all, it asks AI, and then it takes that response from the AI, the output of this Ask AI node, and it feeds it into another AI prompt. And then hits if else. So if it is a feature, update ticket to a feature request, and if not, update it to a bug. But that's a bit about the end-to-end and where workflows can be enabled. How we're working to really keep things useful, like reduce mean time to resolution. That's always a key metric that people want. You know, how to keep people up to speed and not miss notifications. All of these things we sort of touched on through that. Now, I do want to quickly find a question that this, let me see what, I'd really like to find one that hasn't been answered is, okay, apparently all the ones I can think of, I've actually used recently. But when a question does come in and it can't get answered, I'll show you some Q&As. This is what it looks like. Here is a Q&A that is review needed. Here's a Q&A that was published. I can open that. I can look at more. I can see who the owner is in case there's been something that wasn't published, that not accurately. I can see when it was created and when it was modified. I can see what the question is and what the answer is. And if I want to go one step further, we can even start to look at, parts. Where are our Q&As piling up? Maybe I only want to look at Q&As for the support app. And the reason this is important is, imagine there's a lot of Q&As that are piling up in one area, one category of the business. That might mean that our KBs are out of date. It also might mean that we need to update those KBs. Maybe we don't even have those KBs. Right, so very, very useful. You can imagine though, that as a user, you saw it with the inbox. There was a lot of conversations. How do we keep on top of it? Well, I might create a view for myself. I'm going to group it by stage. And I'm going to assign to me, and I can see that. Or if it's a manager, maybe it's more important to understand who is the owner. Okay. So very quickly you can understand that. And in a similar way, I can go to tickets. So tickets that are in the system. And I could go sort by owner. Group by owner. So from a manager's point of view, I can now understand all the tickets in the system. These are the assignments. I have 2 hours 34. There's 11 that have not been assigned to anyone. That's probably an issue I should follow up. Ashwini has 6. I want to go more granular. Let's filter it by a part, so category, and I'm only interested in the support app. Okay, so that's made it a lot more digestible for me. I like this, I can save it. Or maybe I want to report on it. I can create that dashboard. And I'm going to create a new one instead of using a template. And create a widget. From there, I might do a count of all ticket IDs, and I'm just curious in a table. And now I can see there's ticket IDs. Now I might want to actually go by owner and preview. And I can see that. I can now start to, maybe I don't want a table. I want to actually look at it visually. I can go and do that. It's very quickly and easy. I can make dashboards. I can make widgets so I can use them. And from there, I can save that. And if I want, I can share it. Again, setting permissions, viewer, editor, who do I want to share with? Do I want to share it with the group users, or do I want to share it with a group? Make it easier for everything. You would have seen share via email. So I can share via email, and I can choose who do I want to send it to in the users group. I can send the message. I can say I want it to be a PDF or a PNG. And as a user, maybe I'm curious in, like as a support agent, I'm curious in the queues. Or maybe as a manager, I'm very interested in this. How many tickets do we have that are just queued? How many do we have that are a work in progress? How many are awaiting a customer response? If I then want to do groups and I want to group it by owner as well, I can start to really get granular, more granular than I was looking at before. Now I'm only looking at queued, worked in progress, and awaiting customer response, and I'm also sorting it by owners. It's very easy for me to keep on top of things. On the other hand, maybe I want to group it by severity for myself and only look at that. And you can see I don't have anything. I've got one work in progress. So in terms of when customers and prospects ask, like, these views are great, but how do you have it for each individual person? It can be completely customized and set up for individuals. And final thing that I'm going to show, and then open the floor to conversation questions, is it's great to have all this for support, but how do we track it? As you just saw, we can create our own dashboards to do our own tracking. But the alternative is some default dashboards. And for this, I'm actually going to jump into a different org. And I'm actually going to jump into DevRev on DevRev so you can see it with some more information. All right. So from here, this is just one of the 6 stock support dashboards. This is customer insights, so L1 insights, and this is just for the last 30 days, as we can see. By default, we're going to put all the most important information at the top in our stock dashboard. Resolution rate, compliance rate. And you'll notice each one of these, I can hover over and I can click because I can actually drill down into them. I can start to understand what is the categorization of these L1 support per customer, per category of our product. How many got escalated to L2 support as a ticket? That might be important for me as a manager to know. So I'm going to click on that and I can go on view and I can understand that all of these got linked further to an escalation with the ticket. Are we handling the workload created versus closed over the time period? Again, you can click into these. But if I'm seeing a dramatic gap between the purple line and the yellow line, well, that's probably an issue that we need to address. Why is that? Is it because there's been a new release and there wasn't documentation for it? Is it because we're understaffed? What is it about what's happening that is making us not be able to close these conversations? Conversations per channel, active conversations per user, per user to monitor who's working the hardest or who's getting the most. Depends on routing. Maybe it's a load based, or maybe it's just round robin, or maybe it's open. If a prospect has an open pool and people just pick conversations, maybe some people are choosing the easy conversations. Bot resolution, this is an important one. How well is AI deflecting? How well is AI being able to reduce the load on the support team? As well as CSAT distribution. 1 through 5, 5-point scale. You can change the names of them as well. That's all done through the snap-in. As we go into tickets, very similar, you're going to notice, but obviously the metrics are going to be different. We want to be tracking how many tickets were created, how many were closed, how many are active, what's the resolution time, average and median, what's our average CSAT, what's the compliance rate, blocker tickets, unassigned tickets. Why are these unassigned? That's an important metric that we should be tracking and that a lot of people we talk to want to track. Similar to before, tickets per customer and by part, tickets linked to conversations. And remember, a ticket could be created from the portal. So you don't expect these numbers to be the same between both dashboards. But how many of them actually got escalated to developers? If I want to be granular, I could even look at a subtype and filter or a part, and I can really get granular on that. How many bugs were getting escalated to developers? How many were not? How many tickets were created versus closed? What's the resolution? The CSAT. What's the average time spent per ticket stage? In a lot of recent conversations, I've had a lot of interest in this. Imagine a prospect, they're struggling to meet SLAs or they're always working to meet SLAs. If you look at this and you actually notice that, well, in the ticket's life cycle, it's spending the most time with developers, then that's a metric of concern. Why is it spending so much time with developers? And is that the reason why we're not meeting our SLAs? That then becomes a conversation you can have with the engineers and the engineering managers. To answer your question, Vish, we'll go through more about parts when we look at the product app. A part could be a project, yes. We would call it an enhancement. But a part could also be a feature. It could be a capability, things that are already in the platform. They're not just in ideation. One of the next dashboards that's native is SLA Analytics. This is both on that conversation L1 level and ticket L2 level. Compliance rates, first response compliance rates, how many tickets did we comply with? But how does that break down across customer tiers? Cool, we had 2 breaches for blocker tickets on tier 1 customers in the last 30 days. Okay. What's the distribution? Hit, miss, in progress. What are the breaches per channel? What are the breaches per customer, per subtype? What is the average CSAT by SLA status? And how many unassigned tickets are there with SLA breaches per customer? Finally, team performance. Again, you will be able to see this on conversations. Actually, I can show you on conversations here. So first of all, how many owners are there? How many average breaches are there? What's the CSAT ratings? How many active conversations are there based on stages? So there's some that are suspended, some are waiting on users, some are on hold, and some are just new tickets, new conversations. All right, so a lot of information is just present there straight out of the box. All you need to do is connect to the different systems. If they're planning to use Jira, they're planning to use Salesforce. Maybe they only want to use us for support, and that's fine. But at least let's give them all that information. If they don't agree with some of these metrics and they want more, they can create their own. They can create it in UI. Okay, so that's a bit of that end to end. How do we take that customer, the feedback that they've got? How do we push it through to developers? How do we close that feedback loop? How do we reduce that mean time to resolution in a lot of different ways, such as session analytics, automating a lot of tasks? How do we keep on top of our notifications? How do we track our work in our vistas, all those lists? And how can we customize them to be more suitable for us, the end user, the agents? Okay. And then finally, we don't do support unless we're going to track it. So what are we doing and how can we see that? Let's use those metrics. If the data is ingested by us, we can track it. But that sort of takes me to the end of today's session. I'll open it up to questions that you might have, things you'd like to retouch on from the demo. Shiv, I might have put some people to sleep. I'm sorry.
No, it's fantastic, Jay. I think you covered most of the support use cases, making it easy to understand, and also answered a couple of questions from the audience as well. Let us see if there are any open questions. Yep, people are awake.
I'm glad to hear you're awake, Greg. That's great. I know that there's some people tuning in from all over the globe, so it's later in some areas.
Thanks a lot. So just give a heads up, like what's in for the next session? What are we going to cover in the next session?
Yeah, so as we start to look at the next session, let me pull up my notes just so I don't lead you astray. We're going to be starting to focus on a product use case. Okay, and when I'm saying product use case, we're going to be looking at how do we take that voice of the customer and start to prioritize. How do we create projects, like Jira projects, which we would call an enhancement? How do we look at them and associate these enhancements with a dollar value? We'll cover some vistas, those lists that are more important towards a product manager. We'll dive into more trails and parts and the knowledge graph. And that's going to give you a lot more context on the support, the assignment. However, support managers don't always appreciate how built out trails or our knowledge graph is. And we're also going to look at session analytics. So if you remember the screen recording, how do we use that and create customer journeys to understand where there's drop-offs? How do we use it to track URLs with JS errors. So that's what we'll be starting to focus on a lot more in the next session.
Also, a few more questions coming your
Yeah.
way. How to answer that?
Greg, that's a great question. At the moment, I'm 95% sure that reports are not getting imported from Jira at the moment, and we would need to recreate them in DevRev. But providing we can pull that, providing that information is pulled in from Jira, Greg, we can definitely recreate those, or you can definitely recreate those dashboards in DevRev.
Not just Jira, you can actually bring in data
Yeah,
from any other external source and create your own custom dashboards.
100%. So I'll bring up actually some of the sources that we do, if you have 5 minutes. All right, so let me share my screen again. So when we're talking about AirDrop, this is what AirDrop is. It's a way for you to migrate that data. Might be one time, one way, two way. Okay, we did walk through one of those setups. But we can see these are some of the airdrops we already have: HubSpot, Salesforce, Zendesk, Freshdesk, Rocket Lane, Confluence, ServiceNow, Jira. And Jira itself, we can look at the Jira app, which we didn't talk about, the DevRev for Jira app. This is where you can allow your developers to create tickets, link tickets, view things, to be able to respond, okay? Look at different tickets and respond to them, both on internal comments or external comments. But yeah, providing we're pulling that data in from these sources, it's living in the system. We've ingested it, and providing we have ingested this data from an external source, we can also report on it.
Thank you, Jay. It was wonderful.
Thank you. So Greg, to answer that, it's really going to depend on a use case for implementation. And the reason I say that is some customers will just use DevRev for deflection, in which case a Gantt chart would be ingest KBs, setup, plug. Whereas a customer that might be looking to implement DevRev from a support purpose and they're coming pure across from Zendesk, there's a lot more to it. It's going to be, you know, inviting users, configuring, setting up the airdrop. That might be a bit more. I will try and have a think about a Gantt chart method of a standard implementation for you, Greg. But at the moment, I wouldn't say there is a standard implementation. And in terms of pricing, that might even be worth getting someone on to do a sort of a pricing session with you. Unfortunately, as a solutions engineer, I don't really get involved in the pricing models. You can see our pricing on our pricing page. It is separated into a basic, a pro license, and an ultimate license. And the way I'd split them up is the basic is more for startups or very early on. The pro is for, you know, the companies that don't need unlimited. They might not get a lot of inquiries. They're happy to pay per deflection, AI deflection. They might not need to have 100 custom fields. They might not need to have all these custom dashboards. Whereas in Ultimate, that is, I call it an all-you-can-eat buffet. It's where there's the charges per deflection is virtually unlimited. They can have unlimited fields, custom objects, reporting on all of these things. But all of this is actually broken down within the pricing page. And as I said, it might be better for someone from the sales team who deals in those pricing calls to have a deeper discussion with you there. Okay, so if I'm understanding your question correctly, Greg.
So Greg wants to understand the implementation steps involved. Do we have a Gantt chart that
We don't
outlines
have a
all
Gantt
the-
chart, no.
Not yet, right? Yep.
No, we don't have a Gantt chart.
We'll build
Unfortunately.
one. We'll build one internally. Don't worry about it. All right, so let's wrap this up.
Perfect. I'll let you do the closing. Thank you, everyone, so much for your time. It's been a pleasure. Unfortunately for you, you get to hear my voice a little bit more in the coming sessions. I hope I don't bore you too much and it is insightful. You can always reach out to me by email if you have any further questions. Shiv, I'll give it to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, audience as well. We are gonna wrap up this session. If you have any questions, please do email. We'll be sending out the recording of this session and the previous one as well. We want to send it all the recording at once. We'll create a folder and share it across. Yep. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
You can end the webinar.
Yeah.